My family found out I am rich, so they demand that I pay for a $35,000 vacation after I have already paid off all of their mortgages on their houses. I'm 40M, the eldest of 3 siblings. My younger brother, Jake, 37M, and sister, Emma, 34F, and I grew up in a modest household. Our parents worked hard to provide for us, but money was always tight. We learned to value hard work and frugality. After high school, I went to college on a scholarship and eventually started my own tech company, which, after years of hard work and a bit of luck, became very successful. Over the years, my family knew I was doing well, but they had no idea just how well. I kept my financial success mostly to myself because I didn't want it to change our relationships. I love my family, and I didn't want money to come between us. I've always helped out when I could, paying for things here and there, but I never flaunted my wealth. About a year ago, my parents' financial situation took a turn for the worse. My dad had a medical emergency, and the bills started piling up. They were at risk of losing their home. I couldn't stand by and watch them suffer, so I quietly paid off their mortgage and covered the medical bills. My parents were incredibly grateful, and I was happy to help. Word of my generosity spread to Jake and Emma, who were also struggling financially. Jake's business had gone under, and Emma was going through a tough divorce. They were both on the brink of losing their homes. Without hesitation, I paid off their mortgages as well. It felt good to help my family, and I hoped it would relieve some of their stress. For a while, everything was great. My family was over the moon with gratitude, and I felt like I had made a real difference in their lives. But then things started to change. It began with small requests for money, help with a car payment here, a little extra for a vacation there. I didn't mind at first. I wanted to help where I could. Then came the bombshell. One evening, my family gathered for dinner at my parents' house. After a few glasses of wine, my brother and sister started talking about a dream vacation they had been planning. They were excitedly discussing all the places they wanted to visit and the luxurious experiences they hoped to have. I was happy for them until they dropped the bombshell. They wanted me to pay for the entire trip, which would cost around $35,000. I was taken aback. I had already paid off their mortgages, which was no small feat, and now they were asking for a luxury vacation? I didn't know what to say. I tried to explain that while I was happy to help them with essential expenses, a $35,000 vacation was a bit much. They didn't take it well. Jake and Emma immediately accused me of being stingy and ungrateful for my success. They argued that since I had so much money, it was only fair that I share it with them. My parents, who had been quietly listening, chimed in, saying that it would be a great way to bring the family closer together and create wonderful memories. They insisted that I could easily afford it, so why not make everyone happy? I felt cornered and overwhelmed. It wasn't about the money, it was about the principle. I had worked hard for my success, and while I was happy to help my family, I didn't want to be taken advantage of. I tried to explain my feelings, but they were met with hostility and resentment. Jake went on a tirade about how I had always been the favorite and that my success had made me arrogant. Emma started crying, saying that I didn't care about their happiness and that I was abandoning them in their time of need. My parents looked at me with disappointment, and I felt like the bad guy. I left that dinner feeling utterly defeated. Over the next few days, I tried to reach out to my family to talk things through, but they wouldn't listen. They were convinced that I was being selfish and greedy. The requests for money didn't stop, if anything, they increased. It seemed like every week, there was a new emergency that required my financial assistance. I found myself in a difficult position. I loved my family and wanted to help them, but I also needed to set boundaries. I couldn't be their endless source of money, especially when the requests were becoming more frivolous. I decided to take a step back and reassess the situation. I reached out to a financial advisor and a therapist to get some perspective. They both agreed that I needed to set clear boundaries with my family and communicate my feelings honestly. It was time to have a difficult conversation. I invited my family over for dinner at my house. I wanted to create a comfortable environment where we could talk openly and honestly. As soon as they arrived, I could sense the tension. They were all on edge, probably expecting another argument. After dinner, I sat them down and told them how I felt. I explained that while I was more than willing to help with essential expenses and emergencies, I couldn't continue to fund their luxury desires. I told them that I loved them and wanted to support them, but I needed them to respect my boundaries. The conversation didn't go as I had hoped. My family was hurt and angry. They accused me of not caring about them and being more concerned with my money than their happiness. They couldn't see that I was trying to help them in a way that was sustainable and fair. Jake stormed out, calling me a selfish bastard. Emma followed, sobbing and accusing me of ruining her life. My parents stayed behind, but their disappointment was palpable. They told me they were ashamed of how I had treated my family and that they never expected me to turn my back on them. I was heartbroken. I had tried to do the right thing, but it seemed like nothing I did was enough. Over the next few weeks, I felt the strain in my relationships with my family. They barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was cold and distant. I found solace in my friends and colleagues, who offered support and understanding. They helped me see that I wasn't in the wrong for setting boundaries and that my family's reaction was more about their own issues than my actions. It was a tough pill to swallow, but I realized that I couldn't control how my family chose to respond. All I could do was stay true to myself and my values. Months passed, and the distance between my family and me grew. I missed them terribly, but I knew I couldn't give in to their demands. I continued to reach out, hoping that time would heal the wounds and that we could find a way to rebuild our relationships. One day, out of the blue, Jake called me. He sounded different, calmer, more reflective. He apologized for his behavior and admitted that he had been wrong to expect so much from me. He said he had been going through a tough time and had taken it out on me. He thanked me for everything I had done for him and asked if we could meet up to talk. We met for coffee, and for the first time in a long time, we had an honest conversation. Jake explained that he had been feeling insecure and jealous of my success, which had fueled his unreasonable demands. He said he was working on getting his life back on track and wanted to mend our relationship. It was a turning point. I could see that Jake was genuinely remorseful, and it gave me hope that things could get better. We talked about our childhood, our dreams, and our hopes for the future. It felt like we were reconnecting on a deeper level. Emma reached out a few weeks later. She, too, apologized for her behavior and admitted that she had been caught up in her own struggles. She said she missed our close bond and wanted to make things right. We had a long conversation about our feelings and the impact of money on our relationships. My parents were the hardest to reach. They had been deeply hurt by the rift in our family and struggled to understand my perspective. It took time and patience, but eventually, they began to see that my actions were not out of selfishness but out of a desire to help in a meaningful way. We started having regular family meetings to discuss our issues and find solutions together. It wasn't easy, and there were still moments of tension and disagreement, but we were making progress. Slowly, we began to rebuild the trust and love that had been damaged. Looking back, I realized that money can be a powerful force in relationships, but it doesn't have to be a destructive one. Setting boundaries and communicating openly were crucial steps in finding a balance that worked for all of us. It was a difficult journey, but ultimately, it brought us closer together. Today, my family and I are in a much better place. We have learned to appreciate each other for who we are, not for what we can provide. We still have our differences, but we approach them with more understanding and compassion. I'm grateful for the lessons this experience taught me and for the chance to rebuild the relationships that matter most to me. So, viewers, am I the asshole for setting boundaries with my family? I don't think so. I think it's important to help those we love, but it's equally important to respect ourselves and our limits. If anyone else has been through something similar, I'd love to hear your stories and how you handled it. Thanks for reading.